The Terran Alliance had never imagined they would face an ultimatum from the Zarathi Dominion. The alien empire was vast, its fleets spanning star systems like a dark shadow engulfing the galaxy. Yet, despite their numbers and advanced technology, the Zarathi sent only one message: surrender or face annihilation. The broadcast was clear, cold, and devoid of negotiation. An unyielding decree broadcast in every known language, translated through ancient quantum relays. For most of the galaxy, it was the endgame of centuries of tensions. For humanity, it was a challenge written in destiny. Earth's leadership convened under the cold light of the orbital council chamber, faces grim but unbowed. The president's voice echoed through secure channels as he declared a single word that would ripple across the stars: no. The aliens expected fear, submission, or at least bargaining. Instead, humanity responded with unity born from generations of survival and resistance. Across the Terran colonies, citizens rallied to the call, not for surrender, but for preparation. Shipyards worked around the clock, retrofitting old battleships with new weapon systems scavenged from forgotten wars. Scientists unlocked ancient Earth technology buried deep in lost archives, harnessing energy sources that could level entire fleets. Humanity was not naive. They knew the price of defiance could be extinction. But to bow to an alien empire demanding unconditional surrender was unthinkable. The broadcast was not just a refusal, it was a declaration that humanity would fight to the last breath. Among the alien observers, the Zarathi commanders whispered of human stubbornness bordering on madness. Their spies reported rallies in spaceports and underground factories, voices lifted in unyielding defiance. It was unlike any species they had encountered, one that thrived under pressure and found strength in unity rather than division. Zarathi diplomats attempted a second message, this time softer, offering terms cloaked in promises of protection and prosperity under their rule. But the Terran reply was unchanged: no. The galaxy watched, some with hope, others with dread, as two civilizations moved inexorably toward war. Humanity's refusal was not mere words. It was a thunderclap heralding the coming storm. In quiet corners of the Terran fleet, veteran commanders readied their crews. They shared stories of Earth's darkest hours, the wars that forged humanity in fire and blood. They reminded their sailors that their ancestors had survived nuclear winters and collapsed civilizations. This was not the first time humanity had faced extinction, and it would not be the last. But the resolve was absolute. Their ships carried more than weapons. They bore the spirit of a species that had never known submission. As the Zarathi fleets assembled beyond known space, the first Terran warships slipped from their hidden docks, ghosts ready to bring a reckoning no empire had anticipated. The galaxy was about to learn that when humanity says no, it means war. The first engagement was a brutal clash in the Vortan Nebula, where Zarathi warships attempted to blockade Terran supply lines. Terran pilots, hardened by countless skirmishes, with pirates and rival colonies, flew with a ferocity that stunned the Zarathi. They exploited every asteroid, every gas cloud, turning the battlefield into a chaotic dance of ambushes and counterattacks. The Zarathi, expecting a swift victory, found themselves outmaneuvered by a species they had underestimated. Despite the technological gulf, Terran crews fought with a cunning born of hardship and desperation. Communications across Terran vessels buzzed with terse orders and dry humor, humanity's way of facing death without surrendering hope. The Zarathi commanders' frustration grew with each loss. Their ships, though superior on paper, were ill-suited to the guerrilla tactics humans employed. The Terrans used makeshift fighters and commandeered freighters, retrofitted into deadly interceptors. They struck supply depots, communication relays, and command outposts with surgical precision. The Zarathi fleets, vast as they were stretched thin across multiple fronts. Desperation forced them to deploy experimental weapons, some of which backfired catastrophically. Yet the Terrans refused to back down, their single word, no, echoing through every battle. The war was no longer about territory. It was about proving humanity's indomitable will. Behind the front lines, the Zarathi leadership convened secret councils. Some advocated for immediate retreat and renegotiation. Others called for total war to crush the rebellious species. Among them was Supreme Commander Velkan, a veteran of countless campaigns, whose icy resolve matched the cold logic of the Dominion. He viewed humanity as an anomaly, a wild card that threatened the galaxy's fragile order. Velkan's strategy was ruthless: grind humanity down until they begged for mercy or vanished entirely. But the Zarathi underestimated the cost of breaking a species forged in defiance. With each Terran victory, their legend grew, inspiring colonies and allies to rally behind the fight. The war was becoming something far larger than anyone had predicted. Meanwhile, on Earth, ordinary citizens transformed into warriors of will and ingenuity. Scientists developed new energy shields, engineers crafted railguns with devastating power, and soldiers trained relentlessly for combat in space and on hostile worlds. Children grew up knowing the name Zarathi, learning that surrender was not an option. Every broadcast from the front carried a message: humanity fights not because it must, but because it refuses to yield. Terran propaganda, transformed from hopeful, calls for peace into rallying cries for survival and vengeance. Even as the war raged, Earth's people remained united, their spirit unbreakable. The alien ultimatum had failed, not because of might alone, but because humanity's heart refused to surrender. Months into the conflict, the Terran Alliance made its boldest move: a surprise assault on the Zarathi stronghold of Dravkar, Prime. The planet was heavily fortified, shielded by layers of orbital defenses and patrolled by elite Zarathi battalions. Yet the Terran fleet slipped past detection thanks to a daring infiltration mission that disabled key sensor arrays. The assault was a symphony of chaos. Fighters swarmed like hornets, bombardment shattered enemy fortifications, and ground forces landed behind enemy lines. Terran soldiers fought with relentless tenacity, pushing deeper into Zarathi territory than anyone believed possible. The galaxy gasped as reports filtered through. The humans had struck the heart of the Dominion. Zarathi warlords screamed for reinforcements, but many of their fleets were still locked in deadly battles across the system. Dravkar's defenses buckled under the relentless pressure. The Zarathi, once confident in their supremacy, found themselves on the defensive. The Terran assault showcased innovations that confounded the enemy: drones that swarmed and adapted mid-battle, energy weapons that bypassed shields, and tactics that combined precision and overwhelming force. It was clear the humans had learned from every battle, evolving faster than their enemies could respond. The phrase, "no surrender," was etched not only on banners, but on every Terran helmet. But the victory was not without cost. The Terran casualties were severe, and their forces were pushed to the brink of exhaustion. Yet, instead of retreating, they consolidated their gains and prepared for the inevitable counterstrike. The war was no longer about survival alone. It was about sending a message, one that echoed in the silent void between stars. Humanity would not be broken. Far from surrendering, they had found strength in defiance. And as the Zarathi scrambled to regroup, a new era of war began, one that neither side could have predicted. Back. On Earth, celebrations were tempered with mourning. Each victory was a reminder of the price paid. Families lost loved ones, but their grief fueled determination. Leaders spoke of a future where humanity would no longer hide behind shattered walls or fractured alliances. The Terran spirit burned brighter than ever, a beacon of hope and warning. The message to the galaxy was clear: when humanity says no, it means war. And this war would not end until one side was gone. Absolutely. Here are chapters 4 to 7. continuing the story. Aliens demanded our surrender. We sent back a single word, no. Maintaining the same tone and style, the Zarathi Dominion was shaken but far from defeated. Their retaliation was swift and brutal. A massive fleet descended upon Terran outposts along the Orion frontier, intent on crushing the rebellion before it could spread. Terran defenses, though battered, held firm as orbital batteries lit up, the void in blazing fury. But this battle was different. The Zarathi unleashed their most fearsome weaponry, planetary-scale disruptors that tore through shields and destabilized atmospheres. Entire cities on fringe colonies were reduced to ash, and desperation gripped the Terran command. Yet even as their worlds burned, humanity's resolve hardened. No evacuation orders were given. Instead, soldiers and civilians alike took up arms. The Zarathi had hoped to cow humanity with fear. Instead, they forged a steel will. Deep within the embattled colonies, human commanders orchestrated guerrilla campaigns. They struck supply chains, sabotaged enemy staging areas, and turned wastelands into deadly traps. Using rugged knowledge, born from Earth's harshest terrains, human fighters adapted quickly to Zarathi tactics. They built makeshift fortresses from wreckage and twisted metal, hiding in plain sight. Even the most elite Zarathi troops found themselves ensnared in human ambushes, fighting shadows that knew the terrain better than any map. The war was no longer a battle of fleets alone. It was a test of endurance, cunning, and relentless spirit. The Zarathi Dominion was learning the true cost of underestimating humanity. On the political stage, Terran diplomats worked tirelessly to rally neutral systems. Many outer worlds had grown weary of the Dominion's iron grip and saw the Terran resistance as a beacon of hope. Secret alliances were forged in shadowed council rooms, while propaganda broadcasts painted humanity as the galaxy's stubborn defender of freedom. Yet this growing support was a double-edged sword. With every new ally came new risks. Espionage, sabotage, and shifting loyalties threatened to fracture the fragile coalition. Still, humanity's refusal to bow inspired others to stand tall. The Zarathi found their enemies multiplying, not just in ships and soldiers, but in the hearts of a galaxy yearning for change. Meanwhile, Supreme Commander Velkan brooded over the escalating conflict. His contempt for humanity remained undiminished, but he had learned caution. He deployed elite task forces equipped with experimental tech designed to crush morale, psychological warfare units, bioengineered beasts bred for terror, and deadly nanoswarms that infiltrated even the most secure Terran bunkers. Yet with every attempt to break humanity's will, the opposite happened. Tales of sacrifice and victory spread like wildfire, uniting people across planets. The Zarathi underestimated the power of hope and defiance, the very essence of the human spirit. For every plan Velkan devised to force surrender, humanity responded with a single word louder than any cannon: no. The war had stretched beyond the Terran borders into the murky reaches of uncharted space. Here, secret alliances formed among fringe species and outlaw factions who saw the Zarathi as oppressors. Humanity's reputation as fierce fighters willing to stand alone attracted unlikely allies: rogue traders, rebel warlords, and ancient civilizations long thought extinct. These new partnerships brought valuable technology and knowledge, transforming Terran forces into a more versatile and unpredictable threat. Smugglers and mercenaries became soldiers of necessity, their loyalty bound by a shared enemy. With every successful joint operation, humanity's network of influence grew, weaving a web of resistance across the stars. The Zarathi Dominion responded by tightening control over its vassal states, forcing harsher conscriptions and brutal crackdowns. Bondissant. Rebellion was crushed wherever it flared, but whispers of resistance persisted like embers refusing to die. Inside the Dominion's capital, secret factions debated Vel'Kon's approach, questioning whether total war was sustainable. Some advocated for negotiation, fearing their empire's collapse. But Vel'Kon's iron grip crushed any talk of peace. He believed absolute victory was the only path. The Zarathi were blinded by their pride, failing to see the cracks in their foundation. Meanwhile, humanity's resolve hardened in the face of impossible odds, driven by memories of their homeworld's harshest trials. On a remote moon base, a clandestine meeting took place between human commanders and alien representatives of the newly formed Coalition of Free Worlds. Plans were laid for coordinated strikes to cripple Zarathi supply lines and communication networks. The coalition brought advanced stealth tech and powerful war engines, while humans contributed unmatched adaptability and fierce determination. Together, they forged strategies that exploited Zarathi weaknesses, turning the tide in several key battles. This unprecedented alliance shifted the balance of power, forcing the Dominion to stretch its forces ever thinner. Humanity's no had become a rallying cry for freedom and defiance across the galaxy. Amidst this growing strength, cracks appeared within the Terran alliance. Political factions debated how far the war should go, some pushing for peace. Talks to prevent further bloodshed, others urging total annihilation of the Zarathi threat. The President's Council was divided, but the people's voice was unanimous. Surrender was not an option. Their defiance echoed in every colony, every ship, every heart. It was a war not just for survival, but for identity, a struggle to prove that humanity's spirit could never be broken, no matter the cost. The galaxy watched as a species once underestimated rose to challenge an empire. The war reached a brutal crescendo on the planet Sarneth, the Zarathi Dominion's jewel and last stronghold in the Outer Rim. Terran and Coalition forces launched a massive coordinated assault, overwhelming the Zarathi with precision strikes and relentless ground campaigns. The planet's fortified cities became death traps as human engineers sabotaged defenses, turning the Zarathi's greatest advantages against them. Starfighters tore through orbital shields while command centers burned. Zarathi forces, once invincible, faltered under the unyielding assault. The skies above Sarneth were painted with fire and smoke, a testament to humanity's refusal to yield. Supreme Commander Vel'Kon fought tooth and nail, rallying his remaining forces in desperate counterattacks. His fury was legendary, but it could not turn the tide. As his fleets fell one by one, he realized the cost of underestimating a species forged in defiance and struggle. His empire, once feared across galaxies, now crumbled under the weight of rebellion. On the battlefield, Terran soldiers pressed forward, their war cries echoing across shattered landscapes. For them, Sarneth was not just a victory, it was proof that no empire could demand their surrender and live. The fall of Sarneth shattered Zarathi morale and sparked uprisings throughout their territories. Colonies seized the moment to rebel, inspired by humanity's unbreakable will. The Dominion fractured, with warlords vying for control and diplomats scrambling to salvage what remained. Yet humanity did not gloat. Their war was not of conquest, but survival. The Terran leadership extended offers of peace to those who renounced the Dominion's tyranny, but their message remained clear. Surrender was still a choice, and humanity would accept nothing less than freedom. As Zarathi forces disbanded or defected, survivors whispered legends of the humans who refused to bow. Stories spread of the No Warriors, a name given to those who faced overwhelming odds and answered only with defiance. For humanity, the war was more than battles. It was a testament to their nature. They had said no to extinction, no to submission, no to erasure. And in saying no, they had carved their place in the stars forever. With the Zarathi Dominion defeated, the galaxy stood on the brink of transformation. The Terran Alliance emerged not as conquerors, but as guardians, champions of freedom forged in the crucible of war. Former enemies and allies alike looked to humanity with a mixture of awe and respect, recognizing a species that had refused to be broken. The scars of war ran deep, but so did the hope for a new era where defiance meant survival, and strength was born from unity. The president's final broadcast echoed through the cosmos, a vow to protect liberty and prevent tyranny's return. In the aftermath, humanity led efforts to rebuild shattered worlds, forge alliances, and share technology with those who had suffered under the Zarathi yoke. Their message was simple yet profound. Freedom was worth fighting for, and surrender was never the answer. Terran scientists and diplomats worked tirelessly to mend the fractures left by war, while soldiers stood ready to defend their hard-won peace. The legacy of their defiance became a beacon for other oppressed species seeking hope among the stars. But, even as peace settled, the memory of the Zarathi ultimatum lingered, a reminder of the cost of submission and the power of a single word. Humanity knew the galaxy was vast, filled with unknown threats and ancient rivalries, yet they faced the future with confidence born of struggle. Because when the universe demanded their surrender, they responded as they always had, with a single word: no.